Okay, hi all. This is my third go at trying to set up for modelling a vehicle. The first time I forgot to turn on the microphone, and the second time I forgot to press record. So it's just been one of those days so far, but moving on to the relevant stuff. So I've gone to blueprints.com to have a look at modelling a potential aircraft, because I personally find modelling an aircraft to be a little easier than modelling a car with wheels and ground stuff, because the lines are a little easier, for want of a better description. I've set it on the Sopwith Camel, so this is a copy of the Sopwith 1, which is a different edition of the vehicle, but it gives me more cross sections, A, B, C, through there, through D, and then through E to D, these different parts. But the Sopwith Camel provides some information of the cross section, so it gives me A, which is just in front of the cockpit, B, just behind the cockpit, and C, further down the length of the vehicle. So it gives me an idea of how that shape changes as the vehicle goes along. So I've downloaded this image, I've hunted for some references, and I've found one thanks to Wikipedia, which is quite nice and clean. I'm also going to be using the Wikipedia article for the actual size or dimensions of this vehicle, which I've also double checked against this aviation website, which has a historical aircraft, and also some good reference images as well. So the idea is to build up a bit of a profile of what the thing looks like. So here you can see in this folder, I've got all these different images of this vehicle. So first up, I'm going to switch to wireframe mode, which is pressing the Z key. Actually, no, first up, before I even get started, I'm going to turn on the keyboard shortcuts so I don't have to talk about them all the time. I'm pressing N to hide that side panel there, or otherwise known as the N panel, for God knows reason, because it's a keyboard shortcut. Anyhow, so switching to wireframe mode, that way I can see through it. Now with my cube, I'm going to rename this bounding box, because it is basically giving me a guide as to how big this thing is. I'm also going to add in a second collection, which I'm going to just call reference. So this is for reference images, it is for things like the bounding box and that sort of stuff. So when I don't need it, I can hide the whole stack, individually, or hide the whole stack. And I'll add more to that as we go along. So, how big should this cube be? So firstly, I need to give it a height. Height's pretty easy. I'm just going to use the straight up and down, which is otherwise known as the blue line for the Z direction. So going back to the Wikipedia article, I'm going to grab this 2.59, copy it, go to this cube and adjust its size. Here's where I actually do need the N panel to get the item's dimensions. And I'm going to lock in that Z direction, which will make it a little taller, as you can just see there. Then I'm going to get the wingspan, the width of the aircraft. Now, from experience, I know that if I press 1 on the keyboard, that's my front view, and then I can rotate. So along the red line is the width, which is the X direction. So if I just paste that in, that will give me the width of the aircraft. And then finally, of course, I need the length. So 572, copy, and then paste it into what's left over. So that gives me the size of this aircraft done. Now I need to start adding in these images I talked about. So I'm going to hide the N panel because I don't need that anymore. And firstly, I'm going to look from above. So the first image is this reference image of the camel. I'm just going to minimize that so I can drag and drop in there. I did convert it from the original GIF or GIF, because Blender doesn't deal with those, but it does deal with PNGs, JPEGs, and a bunch of other formats. So instantly I know this is the front of my aircraft down the bottom, and that's the back up the top, and this image is pointing sideways. So the first critical step is actually to rotate it 90 degrees. Now it's pointing up, so it's pointing the wrong direction. If I put a minus in front of it, it points in the other direction. To give you a clear example, if I hit R for rotate, rotating towards the left, or an anti-clockwise is negatives, clockwise is positives, and I can keep going positive for many, many turns. Escape. So rotate minus 90 degrees, that way I know it's pointing down, and then I'll get it into position to make any final adjustments I need to. So again, resizing is actually really easy. Grab a corner, slide it out. What I'm doing is basically eyeballing it to get it roughly to size, and then I'm going to grab it and reposition it so it's centered. So I'm using the tail of the aircraft to line up with that green line. You notice the wings should touch both sides of the bounding box. Now the hassle is that I'd like to get this so it's straight, and I think it's a little bit off angle. So I want to make this image transparent, so I'm going to go into the object properties, which I'll just hover here, object data, to adjust the image. So here it's displayed as an image. Great, it's giving me size information. I'm going to turn on the alpha so it's somewhat see-through, dropping it down to 40 to 50% or 0.4 to 0.5, and then make it display so that it only displays the front side of it. So if I flip around underneath, I can't see it because I only need to worry about what I'm looking for above. And the other option is whether I turn it off the perspective view. So perspective, if you look into the distance here, you can see how the squares get smaller and smaller the further they go away from you, like in perspective-based art. Whereas orthographic, if I look from above, it's all assumed to be a very flat plane and everything's the same distance away, which is the rough thing. So if I turn display perspective off, as soon as I switch off that orthographic view into perspective mode, it disappears. And so that way I can focus on modeling and then switch off to look at how it looks in its entirety, and then press 7 on the keyboard to flick back to the top view. So what you'll notice is that this side just to the left, this side just to the right, so it needs a tiny rotation. So I'm going to press R again, but you'll notice that, oops, it's doing something weird over here. I'm not too sure what's going on with this image, but I need to make it rotate and adjust a little bit. So here, pressing R, this is too much. So if I hold down the Shift key, it gives me smaller scale rotations so that the big mouse movements are translated into smaller scale, and I can adjust the size accordingly. So here, I've got two options. I can make top and bottom touch, which means that the aircraft is a little smaller than its wingspan would suggest, or I can make the wings touch the edges, but the consequence, of course, is the aircraft goes over a little bit. So if I grab just in the Y direction to pull it down, so that the very tail touches and the front of the nose cone touches, or I can push it, grab Y the other way so that the back of the wings touches and that just touches. So this is how I've been doing it so far. Anyhow, switching to the side view, I need to display another image. So going to my image stack, again, same deal. This one's actually a little easier because, grab, resize. It's a little easier because it's actually pointed the right direction. I don't have to rotate it. So making things touch, and I'll just grab that, slide it down. Tail touches, front touches, and then grab Z direction just to bump it up a little bit so the wing touches. So here I'm kind of breaking the known measurements because this image is a little bigger than what I expected. The other one's a little different as well. So I'm just trying to get it going the right way. Then finally, back to my object data. I want to use transparency to drop that down to 50% so I can see through it. Front only, perspective off. This way I can focus on the image itself. Alright, and also I need to label that side view, which I forgot to do for the one before it as well. So, and that will be top view. So I know what each of these images is about. Then switching to the front view, we get the final image I need to add in, and it's got a little bit of a quirk to it as well, so I'll drop that in position. First thing you'll notice is it needs to be rotated 90 degrees, so rotate 90. Click it, R for rotate 90. It's upside down, let's put a minus sign in the front of that so it points the right way up. Grab it, drop it in position, and you'll notice it's only half an aircraft, but that's okay, we can work around this. So I'm just gauging the top and bottom, so that distance there is about the same as that, so it needs to be a tad bigger. Grab it, position it, touch top, still too small, alright, grab it and size it up. So what I'm trying to do is just get that touching the edges. So, yeah. What I'm looking for in this case are two things. The first is the wingtip touching the very edge, like what I did with the top image. And also the center line of the aircraft. Now I zoom in, you can see what I'm talking about. Whoops, that's wrong. Wrong button, presses back to the front view, and then hold down Shift, not space, and zoom in. The center line of this aircraft touches this center line, the blue line. If I turn on alpha and drop transparency, it'll become a little clearer if I actually selected the right image. Yep, I did. Alright, so you can see here, and it probably actually needs a touch of rotation just to get the top of that wing flat, because from looking at the reference images I realised the wing is kind of flat. So just give it a gentle tweak, and that should give us what we want. Now this image is just a tad too big because that cross and that cross are on a little beyond the center line, but that's okay. I can pull this in just a tad and then just grab it and bump it up. Now when you look at the three views in reality, if I turn it on like this and that one, you'll realize that my sizing is actually a bit out. So if I look at this, those wheels descend below the bounding box, but if you flick to the side view, the wheels are touching the bounding box. If I go to the top view, the wingtips touch, the center line's kind of good, the tail sticks out the end, but on the side view the tail doesn't. So it's just a rough guide, and I'm just using this to guide how I'm going to model stuff and where I generally want it positioned.